sent a mass email to the A's instead of admins.
Oh,
Just, yeah. Just about committee meeting notices. It's not like a big deal. We're just I send it to the wrong one.
All right, let's walk.
My brain is clearly not top functioning.
You've
Say
got
half the time they can open it.
PFR,
I guess
House
that's
First
true.
Reader and
It's
Senate,
useful information.
I'll send another one.
a rules report, a SLOGO report, second reader.
What about regulated industry?
I do not have the reg industry report.
It just came out.
May I have a copy of that? It's probably in my inbox. There's a local calendar which you touch. You got the second reader, two special presentations, SR 64 and SR 45.
Yep.
And on the rules calendar, you'll have two minority reports.
In my hand.
Wonderful.
I'm waiting on us to sign one of them.
Yes, sir.
You want to come by the office after session? Today seems to be the day for a strong pattern.
Good morning, good morning. The time for convening has arrived. The Senate will come to order. All unauthorized personnel, please exit the chamber at this time. The chair recognizes the young man from Noonan, Georgia. How are you, Senator?
I'm great, Mr. President. Not feeling so young anymore. Getting a little older. Mr. President, after meeting these pages today and going through their names, I am going to go ahead and pre-warn you. This is my most challenging day of announcing our pages since we started doing this a couple years ago. But they have coached me, and we're going to say them all right. But we do have a great group of pages here today. Out of Cumming, Georgia, we have Prisha Lascar. Out of Atlanta, we have Martin Jose Hernandez. Out of Sandy Springs, Kevin Lopez Garcia. Out of Cumming, Kruthik Chandrasekhar. Out of Lincolnton, we have Harper Cunningham. Out of Cumming, Pranil Digamala. Out of Marietta, Aiden Flagg. Out of Lincolnton, Kylie Hedrick. Out of Cumming, Krisha Iskande. Out of Cumming, Lavanya Kajayam. Out of Cumming, Ryan Nowicki. Out of Cumming, Samya Pawai. Out of Cumming, Kyan Patel. Out of Gainesville, we have Carter Perry. Out of Cumming, we have Era Santosh. Out of Cumming, we have Smriti Siddharth. Also out of Cumming, Nidhi Tekmal. Another one out of Cumming, Jyothardara Thirumala Sethi. Out of Atlanta, Sarah Young. Out of Baxley, we have Jacob Carr. And also out of Baxley, we have Jordan Todd. Y'all give these pages a big round of applause. We look forward to working with y'all to do the people's business here in the Georgia State Senate. Mr. President, the journal has been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator. Is there objection to dispensing of the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators that have bills and resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk. First reading and references. Secretary?
Senate Bill 141 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 48 of the official code.
Finance.
Senate Bill 142 by Senator Jackson of the 41st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to medical
Regulated
practice.
industries.
Senate Bill 143 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 7 of Title 47 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to
Retirement.
Senate Bill 144 by Senator Watson of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 7 of Title 2 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to the liability for use of fertilizers, plant growth regulators, or pesticides so as to clarify.
Agriculture.
Senate Bill 145 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 15-6-2 of the official code of Georgia annotated.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 146 by Senator Williams of the 25th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 31, 36, and 44 of the official code of Georgia annotated.
Regulated industries.
Senate Bill 147 by Senator Rhett of the 33rd and others, bills being entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 42 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to conditions
Public
of the...
safety.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
First reading and references, House bills.
House Bill 61 by Representative Seba of the 34th and others, bills being entitled Act to amend Code Section 40-2-151.
Public safety.
House Bill 114 by Representative McDonald III of the 26th and others, bills being entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-1.
Transportation.
House Resolution 97 by Representative Green of the 154th and others, a resolution authorizing the convenience
State
of
institutions and properties.
House Resolution 98 by Representative Green of the 154th and others, a resolution authorizing the granting of non-exclusive
State
easements.
institution and properties.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 81, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 94, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 112, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser, or the 46th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.10b, the Committee on Rules has referred the following legislation from the general calendar, Senate Bill 10, to the Committee on Rules. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brass of the 6th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations Local has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 5, due pass. House Bill 6, due pass. House Bill 13, due pass. House Bill 32, due pass. House Bill 33, due pass. House Bill 39, due pass. House Bill 160, due pass. House Bill 174, due pass. House Bill 28, due pass. House Bill 29, due pass. House Bill 103, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 52 by Senator Goodman of the 8th and others, Timberlands Recovery, Exemption, and Earning Stability Trees Act, enact. Senate Bill 68 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, Civil Practice, Substantive and Comprehensive Revision of Provisions Regarding Civil Practice, Evidentiary Matters, Damages, and Liability and Tort Actions, provide. Senate Bill 97 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, Georgia Courts Access and Consumer Protection Act.
69.
Senate Bill 69 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, Georgia Courts Access and Consumer Protections Act, enact. Senate Bill 72 by Senator Brass of the 6th and others, Hope for Georgia Patients Act, enact. Senate Bill 76 by Senator Eccles of the 49th and others, license plates, specialty license plate benefiting the Georgia Veterans Service Foundation, establish. Senate Bill 99 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, crimes and offenses, definition of law enforcement officer, provide. Senate Bill 101 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, testing and newborn screening system, require. Senate Bill 102 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, dogfighting, revised provisions. Mr. President, that completes the order.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Recognize the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 41st, 43rd, 44th, and I want to welcome back to the good old USA the senator from the 10th.
Oh, he is back. Look at him. Without objection, senators from the 41st, the 43rd, and the 44th are excused. Any other motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll. Senator, signify your presence by voting the yay switch. Secretary, unlock the machine. It is now time for the morning devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all conversation. I would ask the doorkeepers to secure the chamber at this time. Now, it gives me great pleasure to recognize the senator from the 40th to introduce our chaplain of the day and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President, and to my colleagues in the Senate, please join me for the pledge to the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and for the principles of which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. Please join me in welcoming Bishop Robin Deese as chaplain of the day. Bishop Deese is the resident bishop of the Georgia Episcopal area of the United Methodist Church, including the North Georgia and South Georgia conferences. She was elected bishop by the 2022 Southeastern Jurisdictional Conference of the United Methodist Church and consecrated on November 4th, 2022. Her first assignment as bishop was to the North Georgia Episcopal area of the United Methodist Church, and she began service in North Georgia on January 1st, 2023. On September 1st, 2024, she began her next assignment as the bishop of the New Georgia Episcopal area. Bishop Deese grew up in Brooklyn, New York, one of 13 siblings. She graduated from Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina in 1992. She earned a Master of Divinity degree and a Doctor of Ministry degree in stewardship from Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. Before her election to the episcopacy, Bishop Deese served as pastor and district superintendent in the South Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church and has been involved in numerous denominational and conference boards and committees. Bishop Deese is also here today as part of an advocacy day organized by the Georgians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, whose members are in the gallery. Today, they especially want you to learn about why it is important to end the death penalty for persons with intellectual disabilities. Please welcome Bishop Deese.
Lieutenant Governor Jones, Senator Harrell, and you, the members of the House, thank you for your vision and your leadership and your love for this significant work that you do for the state of Georgia. Senator Harrell mentioned that there were 13 siblings in my family, 2 parents in one home together, raising and nurturing 13 kids. And yet, when my mother was suffering from leukemia and the complications from Alzheimer's, I came to the realization that 13 children cannot take care of one parent. My siblings and I could not agree or decide together how my mother could be best cared for in her latter days. Because whenever human beings gather to work, to play, to worship or to serve, to live or to die, politics are at work. Questions have to be asked and answered. Who will lead? Whose voices will be heard? Whose voice will we heed? Whose opinions do we ignore? Who has to be placated or satisfied before other opinions can be considered? Who has the power to make the final decision? Politics. It's the way we organize ourselves within a community and the power dynamics operating in that organization. The community may be a corporation, a city, a university, a church, or even a family. My friends, politics can never be separated from our daily living. So, as a religious leader, one who is called to speak on behalf of the least of these, I, along with my other colleague bishops and clergy of many faiths, gather with you today because the church is not separated from society, politics, or our everyday living life together. So I would ask that my colleague clergy, bishops, and the clergy would stand and extend their hands over this house as I pray. Gracious and loving God, we come before you with hearts full of gratitude for the leaders you have placed in positions of authority. We lift up these political leaders to you, asking for your divine guidance, wisdom, and strength as they navigate the complexities of governance here in this great state of Georgia. Grant them the courage to stand for justice and righteousness, even in the face of adversity. May they be inspired by those who have gone on before them, who have shown unwavering faith, resilience, and compassion in their leadership. Help them to listen to the voices of the marginalized and oppressed, and to act with empathy and fairness. Lord, we pray for unity and collaboration among our leaders, that they may work together for the common good, setting aside differences and finding common ground. Protect them from corruption and the temptations of power, and fill their hearts with a genuine desire to serve. We ask for your blessing upon our nation and its leaders, that they may lead with courage, humility, and steadfast commitment to justice and equality. It is in your holy name we ask these things, and we pray. And the people of God together said, amen.
Always glad to have our Doctor of the Day come down and be recognized. To do that today, I recognize the Senator from the 27th to introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Andrea Huntley as our Doctor of the Day. Dr. Huntley is a board-certified psychiatrist with extensive experience in child, adolescent, and adult mental health care. She currently serves as education lead for child and adolescent psychiatry at Northeast Georgia Health System and as associate program director for psychiatry residency. Her dedication to both patient care and medical education makes her a valuable part of our community. Please join me in welcoming our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Andrea Huntley.
Hello. Thank you so much. I appreciate you introducing me. I am with NGHS. I also work in Gainesville, and I also work in Dawsonville, but I actually treat a lot of patients throughout the state. I am a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, so I have my focus on children in our state and their mental health needs. The other thing, and one of my passions, is training our new psychiatrists. I have Dr. Hendricks. I have Dr. Hendricks with me today. She is one of our PGY3s. We are one of the community psychiatry training sites because we know about the needs of mental health in our state, and we want to address those needs. And I appreciate your attention. Thank you for having me today.
All right, good job. Thank you. Good job, Doctor. We always enjoy having our special guest here today do a special presentation. Secretary, read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 45 by Senator Watson of the 11th and others, a resolution commending the Georgia Young Farmer Teacher Program and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Young Farmer Teacher Program, GYFT, provides systematic agricultural education for individuals actively engaged in farming or agricultural endeavors, and whereas the program operates under the direction of the State Department of Education and local agriculture departments in public high schools with instruction planned jointly by young farmer teachers and participants. And whereas the GYFT's mission is to provide educational, leadership, and networking opportunities to agriculture education students and adults interested in agriculture, assisting them in achieving their personal goals and creating a more viable and sustainable agriculture industry in Georgia. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Georgia Young Farmer Teacher Program and extend best wishes for future growth and success. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 11th. Speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor today to recognize the Georgia Young Farmer Program and what they do across our state. I'm a proud member from Colquitt County, and I'm active in the chapter there. You know, as y'all know, it's a challenge to be a farmer these days, and it's great to have an organization like Georgia Young Farmers who's willing to step in and help us out with education and resources and help us make our farms better. As you know, agriculture is always changing, and this is where we get a lot of our information from. And of course, there's chapters all over the state, and they're going to talk about that in a minute, but each chapter treats their individual area and district different. And that's what makes them special, is they adapt to that and provide that agricultural education in their different districts. And just real quick, in Colquitt County, our young farmer teacher helps manage our school farm. And we have a school farm where our high school kids are able to go on that farm and learn about production agriculture. And then they're able to be part of the workforce that we bring back to our farm. And so it's just a great tool that we have in Colquitt County that's in partnership with the Young Farmer Program. But I'm going to turn it over to their president, Jamie Tate, who's another good friend of mine. We went to ABAC together, and we were talking earlier. That was 30 years ago almost. So it's good to have Jamie here and appreciate his leadership in this organization, and just grateful for what they do to keep our farmers educated and doing the great job to feed and clothe Georgians. So, Jamie, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Also, Mr. Goodman here. Me and him met in college in different activities. And Mr. Anderson, are you a young farmer?
I'm the granddaddy.
The granddaddy. Hey, I'm Jamie Tate, president of the Georgia Young Farmer Association. At this time, I'd like to introduce our 2025 Georgia Young Farmer State Board. Cole Roper, vice president. Dalton Green, secretary. James Thomason, treasurer. Dustin Bowen, our director of public relations. Today, I bring greetings from the Georgia Young Farmer Association, an adult component of the Georgia Agricultural Education Program. We are grateful to be at the Capitol today and look forward to visiting with many of you today on our visit. Your continued support of our organization and over 65 chapters across the state of Georgia does not go unnoticed. We are blessed to have over 6,500 members in the Georgia Young Farmer Assembly and provide educational services to over 16,500 individuals across the state. Our program promotes agricultural education in the school system, the community, for students and adults of all ages. Young farmer teachers bridge the gap between high school seniors and adults beyond the high school who are engaged in agriculture. The Young Farmer Education Program concentrates on both secondary and post-secondary agricultural learners and beyond. The program intends to serve all who have vested interest in agriculture and seek to continue educational training through educational classes, on-site visits. Lifelong learning is important for all who are involved in agriculture. The Georgia Young Farmers Education Program mission is to provide educational, leadership, and networking opportunities to agriculture education students and adults interested in agriculture, which assist them in achieving their personal goals and creating a more viable and more sustainable agriculture in Georgia's big ag industry. Thank you.
We always appreciate all the work that Children's Healthcare does in this state, and we always like to recognize them every year, and we appreciate them taking time to come down here to be recognized, but they do a lot of great work. And we got a lot of great members of their leadership team and some future leaders behind us. So I recognize, actually, Secretary, read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 64 by Senator McLaurin of the 14th and others, a resolution recognizing February 7th to 14th, 2025 as Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas congenital heart defects are one of the most frequently occurring birth defects and a leading cause of deaths related to birth defects worldwide, and whereas more than 1 million families across America face the challenges and hardships of raising children with congenital heart defects, and each year approximately 40,000 babies are born in the United States with these conditions, and whereas the Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week provides an opportunity for families whose lives have been affected by congenital heart defects to celebrate life, remember the loved ones they've lost, honor dedicated health professionals, and share information with the public and the media. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize February 7th to 14th, 2025 as Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week at the state capitol. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 14th to speak to the resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I am honored today to be here with the whole team from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, celebrating Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Day and Week at the Capitol. As you heard the statistics for the reading of the resolution, this is a widespread condition or category of conditions that affects so many Georgians in ways both overt and silent, but it can really send families through a lot of hardship and put them on a journey that it requires dedicated professionals at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to help guide them through. I have a couple special guests here today. We have Sloan from the Walsh family. We have Pascal. Sloan's diagnosis is 25 millimeter mitral valve. She's pacemaker dependent and has had numerous open heart surgeries. Pascal's diagnosis is pulmonic valve stenosis. And the reason we share this is because it's important for awareness. It's important for visibility. It's important to recognize the strength of these children and, again, their dedicated care professional team. We've also got families in the gallery who are affected by CHD. If y'all could please stand so you could be recognized. We are so appreciative that you're here with us. We recognize what you have been through, and we stand ready as a body to continue with a commitment to funding, research, the things that you really need to not just keep awareness up, but to make this condition navigable for you and others. And I think we also have CHOA doctors here in the gallery, potentially also. I want to make sure y'all are recognized. If you stood up already, great. That clapping was for you too. All right, perfect. But again, thank you so much for your attention this morning. Thank you everybody for being here. Also, we have Peppa and Flo the dogs. Now, I've heard that Peppa has been to the Senate before, but this is Flo's first time. These are pet-friendly dogs, so catch them on the way to a cup of coffee. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Recognize the senator from the 4th. Floor is yours, Senator. Are you?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make everybody aware that we have a press conference this afternoon at 4:10 recognizing the Interfaith Disaster Cleanup group. We all know that disasters bring all political parties together as one, and we saw that with Hurricane Elaine. We also know that all disasters bring all spiritual faiths together as one, and we saw that with Hurricane Helene. We saw the devastating power of water. We saw the devastating power of wind. We lost lives. We lost property. We lost homes, and we lost livelihoods. We would like to thank the Interfaith Disaster Cleanup efforts for all that they did that help bring our communities back together. And we have a resolution that we will give to them this afternoon, thanking all faiths for working together to help clean up our disasters. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Recognize the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to introduce the men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. On January 5th, 1911, led by the dreamer Elder Watson Diggs, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on campus of Indiana University. The significance of this is the state of Indiana at that time, outside of the South, was one of the strongholds for the Ku Klux Klan. Yet out of this cauldron of hate, racism, and discrimination, these men of achievement, the men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, was born. Notable men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated are Johnny Cochran, Tom Bradley, and John Conyers. And these men of achievement are here with us today. So please join me in welcoming some standing here and others in the gallery, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 13th for a point of personal privilege. Well, Senator from the 14th, why don't you pinch hit for him? Recognize the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Monday of this week, the Senator from the 56th made you aware from the well that on February 7th, I believe, Roswell, Georgia lost one of its finest, Officer Labonte, who was only 24 years old, in the line of duty. And today is the funeral. Senator from 56 and I will be attending in Roswell, Georgia today. But I wanted to make another note just to add my voice to recognizing his legacy in the community, how tragic his loss is and the loss for his family, and to recognize that there are thousands of people who are expected to attend the funeral today in Roswell, Georgia. So this is tragic, but it is a time when the citizens of Roswell are really coming together in a really big way, and we all want to show our emphatic support for him and the type of service that he provides protecting the community. Just wanted to add my voice. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President.
Senator, why don't we just have a moment of silence for doorkeeper? Secure the door, please. We did. We lost a good young man in Roswell, Georgia, and I appreciate the senator from the 14th recognizing that. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 36th for appointed personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as we continue to celebrate Black History Month, I would like to take a moment to lift up the name of Zernona Clayton, a woman whose life and legacy embody the very spirit of progress, perseverance, and purpose. She was born in 1930 in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Zernona Clayton's journey was shaped by a deep-rooted commitment to justice and equality. She pursued her education at at Tennessee State University and later at the University of Chicago, equipping herself with the tools to break barriers and open doors that had been closed for far too long. She's just truly a remarkable woman who lives and works today in our midst here in Atlanta. Ms. Clayton's work in the civil rights movement is legendary. She joined forces with SCLC and Dr. King when they were in Chicago challenging and marching against discrimination. She and her husband, after volunteering in Chicago, uprooted their lives and transferred their citizenship down here to Atlanta. And she worked from then on as an advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was a very close confidant and support for Coretta Scott King. Ms. Clayton put herself at the forefront of the fight for equality, using both her voice and her actions to make a lasting impact. And she hadn't been in Atlanta long when she discovered a painful reality. Black doctors could only work at one hospital in this big old city, and that was Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. They were only allowed one day a week to treat patients there at that hospital. So to her, the idea that access to health care, something so basic and fundamental, was being denied to Black Atlantans, gave her a mission to desegregate hospitals. And she didn't just talk, she made it happen. She took it up as her personal campaign. Here's another inspiring moment of her life, which few can claim that they've done this. She convinced Calvin Craig, a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to renounce his membership and reject the hatred that had defined his life. That moment speaks to her belief in the power of redemption and the possibility of change and in the strength of true leadership and in loving each other out of hate into love. But Zernona Clayton didn't stop there. In 1967, that's a long time ago, she made history as the first Black person in the South to host a daily primetime television show. The Zernona Clayton show was a a powerful moment, not just for her, but for all who had been told that their voices didn't belong in mainstream media. Ms. Clayton's career continued at Turner Broadcasting System, where she paved the way for future generations. In 1993, yet another stellar contribution, she founded the Trumpet Awards, a celebration of black excellence. It continues to inspire and uplift excuse me, our communities today. The crud has got my throat a little compromised. Perfect, thank you. But now I've got to unscrew it. You can see down at the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site her work on display because she created a walk of fame for civil rights workers, both leaders and foot soldiers, and their footprints are imprinted there in a memorable installation. Most notably, through all of her work that continues to this day, and she is now 94, she is the only African-American woman with a plaza, street, and statue named in her honor in downtown Atlanta, right there on the corner where the Regency Hotel is. She believed in building bridges instead of walls. She shared a vision of a world where equality wasn't just a dream, but a reality. Zernona Clayton is more than a historical figure. She's a living testament to the power of courage, conviction, and compassion. And she teaches us, with her life's work, that change is not about waiting for the right moment. It's about making the moment right. So today, as we celebrate Black history, let us also celebrate the power of an individual's determination to put their shoulder to the wheel and change the course of history. Let us carry forward Zernona Clayton's spirit by continuing the fight for equality, justice, and opportunity, because that's how we honor our shared past, and more importantly, how we build our shared future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 13th for appointed personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, in my district, it's been talked about several times in this Senate last couple of days about USAID and regarding MANA and regarding cutting of funding of USAID. And that's been weighing on my mind, so I've been doing a little checking. I talked with a few of the congressmen around, and I got some answers back. And I'm going to read you a few things they sent me back. You probably won't appreciate this, but this is reality. And this is basically the long and short of it. You gotta stop some things to find out where things are going and where money is going. As a senator from the 26th always says, it's all about the money. So I'm going to give you a list of what they sent me right now that they're testifying in Congress about what's going on with USAID. There's a few little short snippets here. $7.9 million to teach Yarenka journalists how to avoid binary gender language, USAID. $20 million for a new Sesame Street show in Iraq to produce one. $4.5 million plus to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. $1.5 million for the art of inclusion for people with disabilities. $2 million for sex changes for LGBT activism in Guatemala. $6 million to transform digital spaces to reflect feminist Democrat principles. $2.1 million to help the BBC set up value of the diversity of the Libyan society. $10 million worth of USAID funds, meals which went to Al-Qaeda groups linked to terrorism groups. $25 million groups to promote green transportation in the country of Georgia. $6 million for tourism in Egypt. I didn't know Egypt needed any money for tourism. $2.5 million to promote inclusion in Vietnam. $16.8 million to separate an inclusion group in Vietnam. $5 million to the Eco Health Alliance group that funded the Wuhan lab virus. $20 million for a group related to key players in the Russiagate impeachment hoax. $1.1 million to the American LGBT group here. $1.2 million to the African American Methodist Church Services Development Agency to help build an auditorium in Washington. $1.3 million to the Arab and Jewish photographers. $1.5 million to promote LGBT and advocacy in Jamaica. $1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem. $2 million to promote LGBTQ equity throughout entrepreneurship through Latin America. $500,000 now, listen to this, to solve sectarian violence in Israel 10 days before October the 7th attack. $500,000. $2.3 million for a small gold-scale mining operation in the Amazon. $3.9 million for LGBT causes in Western Balkans. $3.5 million for LGBT activism in Uganda. $6 million for advancing LGBTQ policies around the world. $6.3 million to study men having sex with men in South Africa. Okay, $3.3 million for education and equity inclusion. U.S. climate strategy change is over $150 billion USAID has spent on that farce. And lastly, guys, if you don't stop some of this, we don't know where the money is going. And it affects someone in my district, and I talked to him about it yesterday. I said, how in the world are we going to know what's real and what's not real until they pull the plug and get a handle on how your money, these people in the gallery and these people in Georgia and all over the United States, our taxpayers' money is being spent and no one is in control of it. So I hate to say it, but I'm all in favor of stopping these programs to figure out what we truly need to be funding instead of this. It's been throw money at the problem. Just toss it out there. No one's watching. And people say Elon Musk is a bad guy for doing this. Thank God somebody's out there championing this and doing this and finding out what's going on. Mr. President, I yield well.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to come up and briefly thank the senators that will be attending the funeral today for the fallen law enforcement officer. I think it's important that the families see that their elected officials care about a young officer doing his job and because of that losing his life. And I want you to think about that. A few days ago, a 24-year-old young man who went to school like all the rest of us went to school, elementary school, middle school, high school, friends, neighbors, girlfriends, buddies, laughing, having a good time. Decided he wanted to go out and be a law enforcement officer for whatever reason. He went out there, he went through the academy, and I'm going to tell you, it wasn't a cakewalk. He had to do PT every day. Not only did he have to try and run fast enough to pass the class, but he tried to run fast enough to beat everybody in his class. And he went out and he did the push-ups, he did the sit-ups, he did all the other things required. He was given a couple of books about this thick, and they're called Ports. And they have more than you will ever want to know about law, whether it's federal law, whether it's state law, city ordinances, everything that you can imagine. And all he had to do was learn it all so he could pass a test. And then he had to get in a vehicle and go drive at speeds he normally wouldn't drive at and avoid cones. He had to drive through cone courses with hundreds of cones forward. And then when he got to the end, making the time, they'd look at him and say, okay, now you got to back through it. And he did. because you got to back through it to pass the class. And if you hit a cone, you fail. And guess what happens if you fail? You don't get to be a post-certified peace officer in the state of Georgia. And they take him to a firearms range and they teach him how to operate a firearm. They send you to defensive tactics class and you get hit with ASP batons, expandable batons, metal batons, so you know where not to hit people. Where not to hit people. And then they take you outside and they get the most awful thing you can imagine, pepper spray, foam pepper spray, and they get about 18 inches from your face and they spray you with it. They spray it across your eyes. And once they spray it across your eyes, your job is to pat down, remove weapons off of it, handcuff someone with pepper spray clinging to your eyes. And when you get home that day and 3 days later, you get to wash your eyes out to get the effects out of it. And the best thing to wash it out of your eyes with is dishwashing detergent. And then you go back and they tell you it's taser day. In order to carry a taser, you have to be tased, and they tase you. And then you get through all that and you go to an FTO, and an FTO, your field training officer, runs you through the rigors and you have to understand everything. Still, you don't have the job until you complete everything. You wear the badge, you take the risks, but you don't have the job. And then one night at 7 o'clock in the evening, when everything should be normal, somebody calls about a suspicious person, and you walk behind a building. And guess what you don't do when you walk behind a building with suspicious people? The investigation's far from over, so I don't know all the circumstances, but I'm going to tell you, you're not trained to take your weapon out and walk behind a building at 7 p.m. because of a suspicious person. You're walking back there to investigate what's going on, because it may be somebody that works there. It may be somebody that's unsheltered or homeless and just looking for a place to hide, or you may go back there and just somebody stealing copper off the back of the building. And you walk back there, and in a matter of split seconds, your life's over. And as tragic as this is, there are thousands of men and women in this state that make that choice every day. There's men in this chamber wearing business suits that make that choice every single day. And I promise you, if you back up 10 minutes and you ask every one of them whose names are on a wall in Washington, D.C., if they would make that choice again, they would tell you they absolutely would. So there are men and women in this state that you're going to question them when they make split-second decisions. You're going to honor them when they die. Just understand, if it weren't for those men and women, not a single person would be in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 35th.
Mr. President, good morning, colleagues. I stand before you today to stand against the threat of President Trump's tariffs on countries like Canada and Mexico. Colleagues, we were all elected to work towards reducing the costs for hardworking Georgians across this state. And each one of you know that these tariffs are tax increases and would do the exact opposite of what we were sent here to do. These tariffs, which are sales tax on imported products, would wreak havoc on everyday Georgians. They would drive up the cost of food, clothing, and business equipment, whether it's a new iPhone, a Shein or Temu order, or a vehicle. Hardworking Georgians would feel this increase in the products that they pay. And while targeted tariffs might make sense to help level the playing field, especially in agriculture, that's not what's being proposed here. What's being proposed are broad tariffs on various countries, including our allies who have been trade partners not only with this country, but with the state of Georgia. To quote something that Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, who I do not normally agree with, but said, is that tariffs will drive up the costs of everything. In other words, it will be paid by American consumers. Why would you want to get in a fight with your allies over this? And y'all, there is no doubt who this tax increase will impact the most. Studies show that lower income Georgians will feel this by far at a time when low income Georgians are trying to put food on their table. My concern is the silence that I've heard, or not heard, from many folks in this chamber. This is a clear issue that all of us, Republicans and Democrats, can unite around to oppose. We serve under the Gold Dome to represent the interests of our constituents and to make life easier for every Georgian across this state. We must find ways to cut costs for Georgia families. Tariffs do the exact opposite. And y'all, this is personal for me for a number of reasons. I'm actually in the process of expanding one of my businesses, and my distributor just a couple weeks ago is concerned about how much more certain equipment might cost because of these threatened tariffs. And while I am fortunate enough to be able to take that hit, what about the single parent that's buying clothes for their children? What about that senior that is struggling for their next meal? They can't afford President Trump playing games with their wallets. Thankfully, leadership from Canada and Mexico have reached agreements to temporarily pause these tariffs. But don't let that fool you. President Trump is playing games with people's wallets, because what those leaders agreed to were the things that they agreed to under the Biden administration. I want to make sure that we sound the alarm and that we are loud about what the Trump administration is doing to drive up costs for everyday Georgians. And I hope that you join me in standing in opposition to this bad policy and speak out against it. I also have a resolution that we will be filing today, and I encourage you to sign it. Because, Mr. President, we have to get down to the business of cutting costs for Georgians, and we have to stop playing games with their wallets. I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from the 42nd.
I don't have a political speech. I'm not quite as exciting. But today is after school day at the Capitol, and we have a lot of folks in the gallery with us today that are working around our state and all part of the Georgia Statewide After School Network, GSAN, and they run after school and learning programs across our state. We have folks from the Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, Camp Twin Lakes, Lift Youth Center, the Jesse Norman School of the Arts, and Raising the Expectations, and more. Thank you so much, already standing up, for being with us today. Thank you so much for what you do for young people and families around our state. Y'all please honor them.
Recognize the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me be brief. I do appreciate the comments from my colleague from Atlanta, but the amnesia must be setting into the Democratic Party because President Trump's only been in office for 3 weeks. I'm sure Hakeem Jeffries and all the national leaders in the minority party have come up with new talking points, but they're really not relevant to today's facts. So, inflation hasn't gone away, and that was started under the Democratic president of Joe Biden. Food costs are up because we didn't stand up to China. We didn't stand up to the cartels in Mexico. And we can ask our farmers who are literally losing their shirts and keeping their farms intact, being able to pay their employees, because the former administration basically allowed countries like China, like Mexico, like Colombia to run all over our farmers in Georgia and across the country. And also it's kind of missing in action too when storms were happening. So we can talk about that too. The other part of this, I mean, even just in the last 24 hours, I think we saw hostages being released from Russia that, I mean, I don't know when was the last time, the shadow government that Joe Biden was running even contacted Russia to get those people home. So if we're going to get up here and we're going to talk about what's the new day and age of what's happening to Georgians and them, not able to pay for gas and food and diapers and buy new cars or pay for college tuition or whatever, let's just remember 2024 just ended in a disaster of the last 4 years of what basically the policies we have to clean up because of your friends in Washington. No disrespect to my friend from the 35th, but at the end of the day, it all sounds good. It's a new TV commercial, but that is not set in reality. And the people that I represent, and I'm sure even the people you represent in Atlanta, feel the same way. So let's just keep, continuing on with the days of yesterday. But there is a new sheriff in town on the world stage, and things are going to get better. We are going to stand up to these countries and put America first. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the senator from the second.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
I thought you come to the front. I mean, you got your Sunday suit on and everything. I thought you.
Well, Mr. President, I just got a quick parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is the new sheriff on the world stage Elon Musk? Is that not true, Mr. President?
The senator is entitled to his opinion. Does any other senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? My man, my old seatmate, the senator from the 26th. Now, this is the only man in this chamber that was in college with Lionel Richie at Tuskegee. Hey, I know, if you got a serious thing to say, I'm going to take a moment right now. You got something serious to say, Senator, in the well? Because I want to talk. He said the only reason why Lionel didn't like him is because he was a good-looking football player. So,
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's all about the money. You didn't say anything when you got that infrastructure money that went to all these cities, counties, and the boards of education. You took it and spread it out, whatever your government entity was. But the one thing that I look at, Elon Musk is not an elected official. Why don't they tell what they paying him to go and do all of these things that he's doing? when you take the President of the United States that violates the law by firing these inspector generals, by federal law, you're supposed to give them a 30-day notice and why you'll fine them. He didn't do that. And he's saying because the courts have stopped some of the things that he's doing, that he ought to have total power even over the courts, who gave him the exemption by being president that he could do what he wanted to do. Now, all of us in here run for office, every last one of us. We go out, we meet the people, we discuss what those issues are, and we make a decision to either support the issues or be opposed to them. But we hold ourselves out to the general public to be elected as a state senator, representative, or congressman. The thing that I detest the most is to put a man who's got about $17 million worth of contracts with the United States government, and he's going in trying to affect those folks who regulate Tesla. That's all it's about. It's about his money. He's building a battery factory in China. He's dealing with worldwide leaders on behalf of his business, and then wants to bring it over here to try to influence folks who make the laws on those various countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember one thing. As we go through this General Assembly, when we talk about farmers who've lost everything, that's what we ought to be talking about. We ought to be talking about the folks who at the banks that got the machines and stuff and the loans, and now they have no crop and got to replant. And for the gentleman from the 3rd, he understands what I'm talking about because he's a banker. They call the loans due and payable, which means that they will not be able to get a crop. See, it take about 10 to 12 years for a pine tree before they go clear cut, so the pine trees can get bigger, so they can cut them down and take them to the sawmill. Pecan trees, 12 years before you can get a crop. So don't tell me about all of this stuff. When you start talking about tariffs, we pay them, the consumer, because the tariff is paid when the folks pick the product up. And then they take them and put them in the stores, and therefore you get the increased price because the tariffs, so they get their money back. So when we come up here and we look at everything that's going on, you got to remember the folks who you represent and what they are going through. Yes, today, I don't have a podcast, but today is a day that David Lucas said we need to be worried about Georgia and do the right thing by Georgians.
Recognize my ag chairman for a point of personal privilege.
You know, as a Georgia farmer, Mr. President, I just want to speak on the issue of tariffs. For the first time in our nation's history, in 2023, we became a net importer of food. We had a $17 billion trade deficit. Last year, it was $32 billion, and this year is it expected to be $45 billion in trade deficit. And from my perspective, what we've been doing under both Democratic and Republican administrations for at least 50 years is we have been implementing emission standards, environmental standards, labor standards on American agriculture and American manufacturing. But yet we have not done anything to protect these farmers and these manufacturers from trade with countries that do not protect their do not produce their products under the same set of standards, and we are exporting American families' financial security when we do that. So I just want to say this. I believe our policy in this country is hypocritical because we say we care about labor standards. We say we care about the environment. But yet we allow these products to come into this country that are not produced under those set of standards, and we're losing our manufacturing and we're losing our agriculture because of it. There were 550 members of my co-op 20 years ago. There's 177 today. Let me tell you, Democrats in Congress, Mr. President, they had a bill that I would have supported. It was a carbon tariff. Any country that doesn't abide by the same emission standards as implemented in the United States, it would put a tariff on that product. There were 3 Democrats in Congress that supported that. I'm all for anything about leveling the playing field for Americans, American agriculture, and American manufacturing. Food is something that's a little different, y'all. We don't ever want to get to be where we're dependent upon other countries for our food supply. If we're not careful, Mr. President, what we're going to end up with in this country is a country full of cheap, foreign-made products, and nobody in this country is going to have a job to be able to buy them. That's what we're looking at. And so from my perspective, Mr. President, when we talk about tariffs, I understand the angst. We talk about cotton. Cotton is a huge commodity in this state. But let me tell you, Mr. President, when NAFTA was enacted in 1994, since then we've lost 90% of our textile industry. Now we import more cotton than we export, but we import it in the form of finished goods because we have no textile industry. Our cotton farmers are completely dependent upon world trade because we have no textile industry. Maybe with these tariffs, look at all the jobs across the Southeast that have been lost because we've lost our textile industry. I mean, we don't build a TV in this country anymore. I've researched it. So I just want to say this. I understand the angst about tariffs, but if anybody is going to talk about tariffs, but yet you're not willing to address the inequities that are involved in the regulatory environment that this country puts on our manufacturers and our farmers, then I really question the motives. Because if we don't address that, if we're not going to change the regulatory environment, then the only option you have is tariffs. So that is just the thoughts from an old plowboy from South Georgia. But I'll say this, the H-2A wage increase 31% in 36 months. That's $250 million a year leaving the state of Georgia alone. But yet we allow products to come in from other countries that they pay the same rate per day that we pay per hour. So do we care about labor standards? Or is it possible that the American consumer isn't paying the cost of a lot of these tariffs? It's the American farmer that's being put out of business because of it. Mr. President, I yield to Will.
Thank you, Senator. As a wise man once said, if you want to get to the root of the problem and figure out how to solve it, just ask a farmer. Because y'all are where the rubber meets the road, my friend. So I appreciate you saying that. And I don't know what, I've been in several businesses, and I can tell you right now, the last 5 years have been the most expensive 5 years of my business. So at any rate, but we're not doing tariffs in here today. So any other senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Hearing none. You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? Chair hears none. The resolution on the consent calendar is adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? You have before you a consent calendar of local bills. Mr. Secretary, do you have any objections? No objections.
Mr. President, no objections have been filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Question is on the passage of the bill of the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the local calendar, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 47 be engrossed.
Senator has asked for unanimous consent on Senate Bill 47 to be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would you like to speak to? Okay. All right. He's waived his reason to speak. Senator from the 30th, for what purpose do you rise?
Just going to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 49th.
Without objection, Senator from the 49th is excused. Senator from the 2nd, do you wish to speak on this, on your objection?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this morning I rise in opposition to engrossment this morning, and I thought that I would hear the argument that we only engross finance and ethics bills, and then you may also hear that how many bills Democrats have engrossed over a previous time period. And I know, Mr. President, it's real hard to let the past go. But I want to share with the body what President Lincoln said in his address to Congress. He said, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is anew, we must think anew and act anew, and we must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country." And what Lincoln was calling Congress to do, if he was here parenthetically, be calling the Georgia General Assembly to do the same thing, to think differently and to act with the challenges of today, that the old ways of thinking won't be enough to address the problems that we face today. And the engrossment on this bill doesn't think about the working families of this state, doesn't think about the parents that have to buy school supplies, no school sales tax holiday on that, doesn't think about the folks that have to buy Pampers, pull-up milk and formula, no sales tax exemption on that. And if we had just been allowed the opportunity to add an amendment, we could have added it to this bill. But because that opportunity is limited, and there's no need to engross when you already got the majority, you got 33, you can just kill an amendment. But it would have this body to have an honest debate about it. And so now, Mr. President, we're no on this engrossment because it kills the opportunity for debate and doesn't allow us to bring an amendment to the floor because you've engrossed the bill. And so if we keep operating the same way as we used to, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and then to expect a different result. And so I just urge my colleagues, Mr. President, and especially those in the majority when we talk about engrossment. I wasn't here many moons ago when the old Democratic caucus was engrossing, but I can tell you that the senator from the second is a little different. And so we got a new minority leader, we got a new whip, we got new leadership, but we're still doing things the same way we used to. And so I would just urge, just the same way President Lincoln did to Congress, that our cases are new, we must act anew, and we must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. And with that, Mr. President, the senator from I-16 yields the well.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 53rd. Now, so we've got a motion, we have an objection. The majority leader declined to speak on his motion, and we are open for a 10-minute debate on both sides, just to put it simple. So if y'all want to take that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know in politics, it's a general rule, if you're explaining, you're losing. And I know the previous senator who was up here, he was having to explain a lot. So I would assume that this engrossment is going to go forward, and we're not going to be able to change anything, but I'm about to be a no vote with the Democrats on this engrossment. And I just have to come to this well and explain that I'm voting no for the exact opposite reason. All right? Exact opposite reason. Because I don't think we should tax our Second Amendment rights at all. And this piece of legislation only goes to 11 days. And I wish it was 365 days for all guns. So anyway, Mr. President, I just had to come up here and explain that my no vote has absolutely no association with any of my Democratic colleagues.
The senator has yielded the well. I recognize the senator from the 19th.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, I'm just wondering, after the comments from my good friend from the senator from the 53rd, if he's gone so far to the right that he's now on the left?
You know, these former House members that we have in this chamber now, I'm telling you. But you know what? They didn't like those guys over in the House, and I like the senator from the 14th, and I like the senator from the 53rd. So I don't know. I don't know, but even though they're total opposites. So senator from the 14th.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
Where
did the word engross come from? I mean, what's the concept here? Is it like a turducken, like the bill's so stuffed, like can't handle anymore? Like what's the thought behind the
I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
The word engross, nobody's answered this question. Why do we use that word to mean you can't amend it?
Senator, you have to ask the author of the one who made the motion right there. And you can either get him up in the well and ask him on the floor or get him off to the side.
Just a deep thought for everybody. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah.
Senator from the 55th.
Ladies and gentlemen, Randall Mangum from the great state of Stone Mountain. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that name. I stand here today because democracy dies in the dark. And it is a very unique tool to engross, but I am not on the committee that considered this bill. When I was growing up in high school, I had a shotgun, and I was glad I had it. I bought a shotgun, I had a shotgun given to me. I don't know whether I bought it or it was given to me, but I went through the whip fields, and it was a single shotgun. And I was going across the field, and this big black snake came, and I blew its head off. As a high school student, but Appalachia is a slap in the face when we have a bill like this and not debate on it, because I have an amendment that says simply to accept assault weapons that when you can pull that trigger one time and it continuously fires. We don't want that, give a holiday for that type of bill. I'm for the Second Amendment. I'm for you to, you come up in my house, you came up the wrong house. Let me say this. We're giving a tax holiday for a weapon. If you pull the trigger, you will continuously kill many people. That's not the message we want to send to Appalachia, to anybody. So I am asking you to vote to allow me to have that simple amendment that will not allow a holiday to pull a trigger one time and kill many, many people. That's not what we want. I will go hunting. I got family members. They go hunting with a bow and arrow. I will do it. I'll go out with you. But please, let's not send this message when we don't give a holiday for schools, when we don't give a holiday for things that we should care about in our community. I remember some parents are struggling and need to pay for books. Give them a holiday. Not that one exception. That's my amendment would do that one simple thing, except. And I'll even vote for your bill. I will vote for it if you just accept and take those AR continuous assault weapons out. Thank you. Thank you.
Senators yielded as well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? Hearing none. Motion to engross brought by the majority leader. All those in favor of the motion to engross SB 47 will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On those in favor of the motion to engross, the vote is yeas are 30, the nays are 22, and the motion has passed. Moving on to the rules calendar. Starting with SB 5, Senate Bill 5. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 5 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 46 of Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to certification of private review agents so as to provide for health insurers to implement and maintain a program that allows for the selective application of reductions in prior authorization requirements under certain circumstances, to provide for an annual filing, to provide for the promulgation of rules and regulations, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date of applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 32nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those of you who were here last year are going to recognize this bill. It was Senate Bill 307 last year, and it has to do with prior authorization, which is the process that insurance companies use to have providers get permission for the medical treatments that they are recommending. And that's for medical procedures, surgery, medications, and imaging. In recent years, a number of carriers have developed Gold Card programs, which is a fast track for providers that do the process right almost all the time. And this requires that health insurers that use prior authorization have a gold card program or a fast track program and provide those criteria to the Department of Insurance. The bill's effective January 1st, and the first filing would be July 1st. Some carriers are already scaling back their prior authorization programs because they have understood that this can save time and money on both sides and ease administrative burdens for patients. I've worked with the insurance commissioner on this bill, the insurance industry on this bill, and I look forward to your favorable consideration. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield away.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary reads Senate Bill 47.
Senate Bill 47 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-8-3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to exemptions from sales and use taxes so as to exempt sales of firearms, ammunition, gun safes, and related accessories during an 11-day period each year, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 47, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-8-3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to exemptions from sales and use taxes so as to exempt sales of firearms, ammunition, gun safes, and related accessories during an 11-day period each year, to provide for related matters, to repeal for an automatic repeal, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, a fiscal note and the minority report have been attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 31st. Speak to the bill.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 47 is a pretty simple bill. This bill is promoting outdoorsmanship. In Georgia, hunting is the primary means of keeping the deer population in check, as well as preventing the destruction of crops or accidents with motors caused by deer. Hunting also stimulates the Georgia economy, and we saw back in 2019, most recent figures, hunters accounted for nearly $1 billion in retail sales and 1.6 billion ripple effect. In terms of jobs, hunting has created 24,000 jobs, 600 million in salaries, wages, and earnings. Sportsmen have contributed greatly to taxes, providing $106 million in state and local taxes that are used for habitat and wildlife restoration projects. This bill would run from the second Friday of October for 11 days. Firearms, ammunition, gun safes, and related accessories would be exempt from the sales tax, use taxes during that period to promote hunting, conservation, and tourism in Georgia. Senate Bill 47 will also carve out a window of tax revenue to expand the base of hunters and increase tax revenue dated to conservation. With regard to crime and trafficking of weapons, this bill is not intended to solve this issue, as it can be assumed that these individuals are not likely paying sales tax anyway. There's also a sunset where this bill would basically sunset July 1st of 2029. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield for a couple questions.
You do have a few questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Of course.
Senator, I'm trying to understand the language that's in this bill. It talks about, I see firearms, ammunition, and safes, and then it goes on to say related but not limited to some devices in there. And it also talks about related accessories. Can you tell me what some of the other related accessories should be? Specifically, can you speak to the need of and whether or not this bill would apply to gun safes?
Yeah, I mean, any
and,
accessory that's
trigger
basically
devices as well?
I apologize, I interrupted you. Thank you for the question, Senator. So basically, related accessories is going to be anything related to accessories related to firearms, things that go with gun safes, could be add-ons or other things that are not listed in this line that you would find in a traditional sporting goods store or retail store or anything like that, even at Walmart.
Senator Yield?
Or even Home Depot when it comes to safes. Yes, sir.
Senator, how do you feel about safe storage devices?
I mean, I think if you're a responsible weapons carrier, a lawful weapons carrier, you're locking up your weapons, keeping them safe in your home. I think for those of us that promote and support the Second Amendment, I mean, I think basic education of our youth, I mean, we see it even in our schools with some of the shooting clubs and things to make sure that kids, even adults, are basically being responsible when it comes to safe storage of weapons. I don't know that Georgia or even the federal government needs to get into the practice of having to legislate basically education in our Second Amendment and infringing on that, or common sense.
So from the sound of that, Senator, the Senator further yield that you are generally in support of safe storage devices. Is that correct?
I mean, gun safes are great. I own a gun safe. I have weapons in my gun safe. I even have, important documents to my family, like pictures, in a safe.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator from 53rd.
Well, my good friend, Yield.
Yes, from the senator from Northwest Georgia. Northwest Georgia.
Senator, to my understanding, last year this was 5 days and you upped it to 11 days. Is that correct?
Correct.
So why not make it even better and make it 365 days?
I think that will be for each and every senator to decide. Basically, our focus here with these 11 days is around hunting season.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Recognize the senator from 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Would this sales tax holiday apply to AR-15s?
In this bill, we have not defined the firearm. I mean, I'll just tell you that I don't believe, and I think this body knows me well enough to know that we shouldn't infringe on the Second Amendment. We shouldn't define specific firearms or legislate in them. I mean, if you're a criminal, you're somebody on the street that's going to cause harm or breaking the law, or you're in a gang, you shouldn't have a weapon already.
Does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that the weapon that was used in the Appalachian High School shooting was a legally purchased AR-15?
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more question, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 9th.
Senator, you yield?
Yep. Yes.
Is it, because I've heard this in the media, is it true that the timing for this proposed sales tax exemption coincides with hunting season?
Yes, we've had that debate in this body before.
Now, does this bill specifically state that the tax exemption only applies to firearms that are primarily used for hunting?
No, I think in terms of hunting, outdoorsmanship, sportsmanship, there's a lot of different devices that are covered in lines 9 through 11. I think the minority party, as we've seen in the minority report, has made it clear they want to do everything they can to infringe on the Second Amendment nickel and dime, different weapons or things. That's not what this bill does. This bill promotes outdoorsmanship, and I think speaks for itself.
Would the senator yield for one more
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
Okay. So given that really handguns are linked to the vast majority of firearm-related crimes, would you, if we could have, been open to exclude handguns and ammunitions designed for handguns from this proposed sales tax exemption?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. So I think related to your question, knives are related to crimes, murders, assaults. I mean, there's other forms of weapons other than handguns that are used by criminals that are breaking the law, and it should be in prison.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. President, I'll also just note, as it relates to the minority report, I know somebody will come up here and present the report, just ask for a favorable consideration, and any other, I mean, it's in gross now, but any other attempts to change the bill, vote red. Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator has yielded as well, Senator. Senator from the 13th, you waive. Senator from the 36th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's all about priorities, isn't it? We send messages when we write bills, when we present bills, and when we cast our vote on bills. We're sending a message. So I think we have to ask ourselves and look deeply into our hearts. Put ourselves, just try to put yourself in the shoes of a parent who lost a child in Barrow County to this horrendous shooting, school shooting that we all suffered through, most particularly the students and the families and the community in Barrow County at Appalachia High School. Put yourself in the shoes of that parent, and you want to turn on your television tonight. Maybe you even look at lawmakers. My goodness, very informed voter. But you turn on your TV or you turn on your smartphone and you read that the Georgia Senate, hurrah, has passed a bill to give a sales tax break on gun sales. Are you all tone deaf? It's like taking a knife and sticking it right into the very heart of a parent who's lost a child, of a family who's lost a teacher, a dad. And this is the message that we think is appropriate at this time and in this place. You know it's not. You know it's not the message that we should be sending. We have for years in Finance Committee begged and pleaded, could women and girls feminine products enjoy a sales tax relief? The answer is always no. The bill's never quite ready. But when the chairman of the Senate GOP caucus brings this bill in the very shadow of this horrendous school shooting that tore at the hearts and the minds of Georgians all across. We mourned with this community that was hit by this school shooting. And we want to stand up and send this bill, which is nothing but a message saying, hurrah for guns. Hurrah for guns. We want to have a sales tax holiday. And we started out with 5. Let's put it up to 11 days. That's a message, folks. You want to go home, and your constituents are going to be hearing this on TV tonight. Some of them might even come up at church and ask you how you voted on it. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Your pastor might even say, let me speak to you for a minute about this. Do you know anything about that bill? You didn't vote for it, did you? That's a genuine question which we should all be prepared to answer and explain our vote here. We had a wonderfully successful, very broadly utilized sales tax holiday for school supplies. I bet you there's not a person in this room that hadn't either benefited from mama going to the store, getting you ready to go back to school, or you've done it yourself for children or nephews and nieces. And all across Georgia, people loved that sales tax holiday. The merchants loved it. It was a roaring success. And it was doing the right thing for the vast majority of families and teachers, educators in Georgia. You know, that thing got sunsetted. Couldn't keep it alive. But let's all race to our green button today. We're being asked by the chair of the GOP caucus in the Senate and vote to give sales tax holiday on guns. I mean, how much does the gun lobby, it's really the gun manufacturers, let's face it, let's be clear. That's who's making all the money. That's who's laughing all the way to the bank about gun sales. And gun sales have never been higher. Call me a liar. Tell me I'm wrong. My information is gun sales across the country have never been higher. So what is the argument for giving a sales tax holiday in the wake of this school shooting that tore apart this county of Barrow and echoed all around the state? We were all shared the collective horror at this tragic loss of life. And two people being charged right now in judicial proceedings on this for the guilt for this. But this is the bill that we want to pass? What's the message? To the gun manufacturers, let's see. Well, we already have guns everywhere laws. You know, I remember very well a big guns everywhere bill, and we waited for the Republican caucus to come down and come to the floor and vote on the bill. We all sat here, the Democrats sat here. They got that bill, they're bringing it down. It's already on the calendar for today. And we waited and they stayed in the caucus. Well, you know what had happened? That horrendous shooting at Virginia Tech, up at the VPI. And a deranged young man, a student, went in and shot up a whole classroom building. Wreaked all kinds of damage, lives lost. I think at the time it was maybe one of the highest body counts of school shootings that we had seen. And the Republican caucus decided maybe we won't do that bill today about guns everywhere. Be a little bit tasteless. Might attract some negative attention. So they waited about 3 weeks and then they passed. I'm looking in the faces of people that voted for it. Then they passed the Guns Everywhere bill. You know, the people who are in charge of our students on college campuses and technical schools across the state, they begged us, the leadership of the academic community begged us, don't do guns on campus. Good God, we've got enough. We've got our hands full right now. Don't do guns on campus. Kick them out of the way and do guns on campus. I mean, what is this bloodlust for guns? Driven by the gun manufacturers who are loving it all the way to the bank. But my point, I think I've stated it clearly. The optics of this really suck. The optics of this are sending a message that I'm not sure you want to go home and explain. I'm just not sure you want to do that. About why you rejected in committee the idea of one of our Democratic colleagues, the idea that why don't we reinstate the sales tax relief on school supplies? No, we got it. This is for people that buy. And you know what? Guns are flying off the shelves like I don't know what. Why do we need to incent gun buying? It's doing fine all on its own. I'll close with this, and it's not a minor point. You got a little yellow sheet in your book, and it's called the fiscal note. We're all familiar with fiscal notes. Well, this fiscal note says that the low estimate is that it'll cost the state revenue about $3 million a year, state and local taxes that are waived, and or all the way up to almost $7 million a year. So that's our priorities. That's our priorities when we are working on a budget and declining this and funding that and not funding this. But we got 3 to 6 million or $3 to $7 million a year that we can invest in this, because what you're doing is sending a message. You're sending a message, and it's the wrong message. It's the wrong time. It's the wrong place. I would urge you to join me and all the folks that are sensitive to the cry for help that we heard from a student who sat right up there in our balcony while her letter was read about the horror that she experienced as someone who survived that shooting. And yet we want to send a message. This bill is a message bill. It's a message bill, is that we're for guns, go for guns. We're for Second Amendment, go for guns. Wrong message, wrong time, wrong place. And I look forward to hearing about the conversations you have back home with your constituents if you vote for this bill. I don't think they would feel it's in good taste, just to put it at a minimum. I will yield the well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm not here to even remotely suggest how you should vote on this bill. You do what you got to do on this bill. I'm here to clear up a couple of misunderstandings that we hear in this room quite often. Does everybody in this room know what an AR-15 is? I keep hearing this term, AR-15. What does AR-15 stand for? And I won't challenge you to answer my question. I'll answer your question, Senator, and I'll answer the question back there. People have a catch-all phrase, AR. What does that mean? Assault rifle. Assault rifle or automatic rifle, AR-15. That is not what it stands for. AR was Armalite Company that was developed in 1950, and they've been making guns a long time. Has absolutely nothing to do with assault rifle or a rifle or an automatic weapon. It is a company that started building pistols, by the way, and developed things for the Army. Okay, that's where AR came from. And we always get hung up on this stuff, assault. Let me tell you what an assault weapon is. It was a Ford truck that was used to kill people in New Orleans. That's what it was. It's a pressure cooker that was used to blow up people in a race, in a marathon race in Boston. That's what assault things are that people do. And we get caught up in this stuff about guns, what things are. Let me tell you something. I own a lot of guns. I like to collect them. I like to shoot them. I like to go hunting. It has nothing to do with this right here. I appreciate this bill because it allows safety in this bill that you can buy safety items to go along with guns. I appreciate the Senator from the 31st for bringing this bill. I just want you all to know, AR does not stand for assault rifle or automatic rifle. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the Senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the Senator from the 13th lesson on what an AR-15 is, but I believe that if we asked anyone in America what was used at Appalachian High School, they would say it was an AR-15. I'm new to this body, and I was really disappointed to learn that we would not be able to make any opportunities to try to adjust this bill to be more in sync with and aware of the realities that just happened here in Georgia 161 days ago. Mason, Christian, Richard, and Christina were all killed by an AR-15. But yet today, the very first action that we are taking in this Senate body is to give a sales tax holiday so that people can buy more guns like this. If we had the opportunity, we would have attempted to exclude those types of guns, no matter what you call them, that was used in the shooting at Appalachia High School. It's unfortunate that what we're doing today is extending from 5 to 11 days and giving an opportunity for folks to buy more guns like this. As I asked in my question, the gun that was used was legally bought. And so we are given an opportunity for people to purchase these guns, whereas we could be trying to do something to ensure that we are keeping kids safe. This does not support our mission of making our schools and communities safer. It actually gives the opportunity for more people to get access to guns. Instead, we could be supporting bills that were introduced by the senator from the 10th to make sure that students do not get access to guns by storing them safely. Those are the types of bills that we should be addressing today, to address what happened in Appalachia and making sure that it does not happen in any more schools in this state. And if we really want to save people money, we could support the bill by the senator from the 7th to give a school tax holiday. I'm sure there are many people that would go out and buy guns that have children that would prefer to have a sales tax holiday so that they can get supplies for their kids. But yet what we're doing is making it easy for people to purchase guns and costing the state money in doing so. So I think it's just very unfortunate that that is the first action that this body is taking in wake of what happened 161 days ago here in Georgia. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well. Oh, I'm sorry.
You do have a
believe,
few
see
questions.
if there's some questions.
Senator from the 44.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. One of the things I've been wondering about is, hunters certainly are passionate about their sport and their activity. Don't you think that, bikers and kayakers, hikers are also passionate about their sport? And what are your thoughts on singling out hunters for special exemptions when others who enjoy outside activity are apparently, we're not discussing whether or not they should also be encouraged in their activity by a sales tax holiday? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. One thing that struck me when the senator from the 31st spoke about the bill is he said it was about outdoorsmanship. But it seems to me that the only sport that we're encouraging is more hunting and allowing more folks to get access to guns when there's lots of other ways that we can go and explore the outdoors. And so I think it's unfortunate that we're not giving a sales tax holiday to other outdoors activities and instead focusing on guns in the wake of a tragedy that happened right here in Georgia.
Thank you. Another question. Isn't it true that in just one example that I just pulled up, just one mass shooting out of the, I think we had over 400 last year, for example, just one, the perpetrator who had a AR-15 was stopped by the police 20 seconds after he began shooting. 10 seconds later, he was dead. But in that 30 seconds, 9 people were killed and 27 were injured. Isn't that true, Senator?
That is true.
And Senator, isn't that why, the amendment that the senator from the 55th spoke so passionately about would really make sense to talk about in this instance?
Absolutely.
The unique deadly nature of some of these weapons that we're actually encouraging, incentivizing, and doing a tax giveaway on.
That's absolutely
9
right.
dead and 27 injured in 30 seconds.
That's right.
Thank you. One more question. Isn't it true that we have a coalition that's actually led by emergency room doctors and pediatricians that are active in this Capitol every single day right now, begging us to do something about safe storage of guns because, sadly, guns have been the #1 cause of death of children in our state for a few years running now?
That is
Isn't that true?
That is true, and we have a problem with too many young folk getting access to guns, and this does not address that issue that they are so passionately advocating for.
And isn't it true, Senator, that it would be wise for this General Assembly to at least have a hearing on SB 49, which would be a safe storage bill to keep our children safe?
Absolutely. I think that we need a hearing on Senate Bill 49, as the gentlelady so well knows, and I would encourage our body to take action such as that versus giving sales tax holidays to folks to purchase more guns in our state.
Thank you, Senator.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Senator's yielded. Recognize the Senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not going to come down to the well because this is really a simple bill. It's a sales tax bill. But then the senator, my friend from the 36, brought up the guns everywhere bill, I believe is the way it was described. Well, that was House Bill 89. I authored that bill. Let me tell you what was said about the bill and what not happened. We were told that when chicken wings were dropped in a restaurant, lead would fly. Didn't happen. We was told when a family went out to dinner and the husband or wife wanted a glass of wine, lead will fly. Did not happen. What did the bill do? Number one, it laid the groundwork to where we are today, which is constitutional carry, which is very important to this state and to our citizens. What we're talking about is a simple sales tax for 11 days for a huge industry in this state. But we're distorting that. Our citizens have the right to self-defense. There are many studies out there, low end, very conservative, 100,000, some says over 1 million instances a year are stopped by a law-abiding citizen with a firearm without a shot being fired, stopping crimes. Our families are precious to us. We have the right to defend our families and third parties, if that came about, in a way that we have to. The Second Amendment is there so we can protect ourselves. Sadly, some people say the Second Amendment was about hunting. If we look back to our founding fathers, that's not the case at all. It was to protect them against a tyrannical government. George Washington said, firearms are the teeth of the people. We can say everything we want to say about this bill, either in favor or against. The Second Amendment is there to protect us, the citizens, the ones that we represent. If someone wants to go out because it's their first time buying a firearm, former law enforcement, I hope they go get the training they need to use that firearm proficiently. And if it's a sales tax holiday that allows them to do it, or to go out and buy that shotgun for their kid so they can take them into the woods and teach them how to hunt, how to respect nature, and just understand the beauty of that partnership between a father and a child or a mother and a child or the family going out hunting together, and this allows them to do it, then let's do it. But let's not distort this to something that it's not. And that's what we're doing. We have the right to the Second Amendment. It's there for a reason. If you don't want to carry, don't carry. I have a feeling most of us have a concealed weapons permit in this building. We use that for a reason, to make sure that we protect our families. So please, it's a sales tax for 11 days. Let's not distort this to something that it's not. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I know. You House members are hard. Y'all hard-headed. Ain't no doubt about it. Hard-headed bunch. Recognize the senator from the 29th.
This is not my first time in the well, but it is my first time following a House member in the well. My colleague who spoke before, the gentleman from the 30th, is right on point. This is about a distraction. If you've ever responded to an active shooter, I'd love for you to come over and speak to me once we adjourn. I'd like to see if your experience was any like mine, because I've actually responded to one at a hospital in Columbus, Georgia. But I'm going to tell you, I made a phone call a little while ago, and the young man watching my house while I'm up here informed me once again that none of my firearms have escaped from my house and went out and caused any damage in the community. I had to speak to somebody one time about pay and benefits for law enforcement, and I gave a long speech about the necessary needs of it and all of this. Afterwards, a gentleman from another organization spoke about the same thing, and he started talking about the number of officers who die on the job as a way of trying to get better pay and benefits for law enforcement officers. And when it was over, he came over to me and asked me how he did. And I told him we just have different philosophies. And he said, "What is that?" I said, "My philosophy is different because I'll never stand on the bodies of my brothers and sisters in order to better my station." And so to come up here and talk about children dying in schools, to come up here and talk about children dying in schools, to show you how disingenuous it is. Nobody's talking about an officer getting shot the other day. Nobody's talking about who got shot last night in Atlanta. Nobody's talking about anything else. What somebody saw was an opportunity. The senator from the 36 said something earlier. She talked about optics. Don't be confused. That's exactly what it is. It's optics. Every time a sensible piece of legislation comes up here, they think about optics. Where can we go find the worst situation possible to show that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen? By standing here and claiming you are offering respect to victims of firearm violence against a bill that offers sales tax breaks for 11 days, not only is it disingenuous, it's disgusting. Firearms don't kill anybody. There is somebody standing behind that weapon with their finger on the trigger, pulling the trigger. If you want to come up here and talk about mental health, if you want to come up here and talk about broken families, if you want to come up here and talk about broken churches and tie all that to violence, then I will stand here with you and we will have that conversation together. And I'll champion right along with you. Those are where the problems lie. Because you know these individuals, once this bill passes, once these individuals go into the gun store and they say, "Hey, I want to buy that right there," and no, I'm not going to have to pay sales tax on it, they still have to go through a background check. They still have to clear all the hurdles that anybody else buying a firearm has to clear. But listen, don't go stand on the bodies of children because you don't like the Second Amendment. That's disgusting. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 14th.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. That's a hard act to follow. The temperature has gotten a little warm. Let me see if I can wind it back just an inch. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when it was crazy for a legislator to drop constitutional carry. This was in the House. The speaker from the speaker, wow, you put it in the air, man. The senator from the 53rd is well aware of a good friend of his, a guy I used to pal around with in the House, shooting spitballs in the back of the bus, just, hanging out because we couldn't really do anything. We were on the wrong side of the speaker. You know what I'm talking about. This gentleman, Matt Gertler, I gave a speech about him in 2022, but before that, years before that, he had the constitutional carry bill. And that was just a bill to get rid of permits, right? Permitless carry. That's what he called constitutional. And he'd go up to the well every day and he'd talk about his bill. Nobody listened to him. Governor Brian Kemp ran for re-election in the year 2022, and something changed between 2020, 2021, and 2022. All of a sudden, Senator from 53rd remembers well, Matt Gertler's bill became in vogue. Now constitutional carry was the governor's agenda. And not only was it that, he went to a gun store. I mean, he had all the rack behind him with all the people lined up, and it was a big celebration to go pass the bill of one of the biggest outcasts in the State House of Representatives just a couple years ago. And I commented on that in 2022, and I said, it seems to me that your base is telling you that what once was considered reasonable on guns in terms of a middle ground is no longer reasonable. And for you to satisfy us, you have got to keep chipping away at the gun regulations that currently exist, which, by the way, is a very interesting sidebar. Every time in this chamber or across the hall we talk about background checks that you have to go through, those are federal. Because the state legislature has been perfectly happy to take away any obstacles to gun ownership and pass the buck, pass the responsibility completely to the federal government to do the only frontline checks on acquiring a gun. So let's be very clear. Y'all do have a problem with your base, speaking of the majority, and your base is increasingly, and I said this in 2022, seeing gun rights through an absolutist lens. So many rights, I mean, if you go to the Supreme Court precedent on any constitutional right, it's always a balance. You can't yell fire in a theater, right? You can't own a tank or a bazooka. There are limits on everything. But increasingly, groups that come in, some of them are AstroTurf from other states who pretend to be Georgia gun owners. That's just, they literally, it's like the Trump Vance signs where you slap Vance over Pence. It's like some other state, slap on Georgia gun owners. These AstroTurf groups that come in and scare y'all and say that, you know, you're slipping on, I mean, have you read these emails? These are like methamphetamine emails from the gun groups that are like, I mean, the world's gonna burn if you vote for a magazine limit, like to the ground, right? So you guys know way better than I do, because I've had friends in the House on the majority side tell me, you think our base is scary to you? Guess what our base says to us, right? So there's a reason that Switzerland has a lot of guns but not the same violence problem. There's a reason that Music Midtown canceled in 2022 after constitutional carry was passed, but then came back in 2023 even though the law didn't change. And the reason is that culture matters. Culture is what drives gun violence. So like, I get it, the smug reaction to the argument, it's the guns, where people are like, well, my guns didn't walk out of the house and kill anybody. You know? We get it. A gun does not go kill somebody on its own. But then ask yourself the question, if the gun's not doing it, why is the culture the way it is? And then we get the smug, I'm sorry, from a couple people, arguments about this is just a sales tax, you know, bill, and to say it's anything different is disingenuous. Bills create culture. Bills happen because of culture. They both happen because there's a culture that exists, and they help create the culture. There's cameras in the back of the room who are going to create culture after this debate's over around guns. Tonight at 7, the Georgia Senate considered, I'm sorry, I'm getting way too addicted to the newscaster voice, Mr. President. But tonight at 7, the Georgia Senate considered a bill on gun sales tax holiday. Eating dinner, talking about guns. This bill comes from a culture and it helps reinforce that culture. And the culture is, in this country, people don't just love guns, they fetishize guns. There are a lot of people who think the Second Amendment's the only amendment, that there is no reasonable middle ground or balance. And those people go to your county party meetings and they scream at you that you have to take more and more absolutist positions on a right that should be balanced just like everything else. So yeah, it's a sales tax holiday, but we're not, as senators have pointed out, doing other sporting events outside. We're not actually trying to just get kids outside and experience nature. We are caving to the absolutists who see gun ownership and use as a religion. And don't get it twisted. When a kid goes and shoots up a school, that's because their culture has taught them that that is the way to solve their problems. And all of us are responsible for participating in that culture to the extent that we do. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
The senator is yielded. Recognize the senator from the 37th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Let me just say on behalf of myself, and I know many others in this chamber, our heart goes out to the families of those who lost loved ones in the Appalachia High School shooting. I'd like to apologize on behalf of myself and others here that there are members of our body who took their opportunity in this well to, I believe, politicize what was a tragedy, to use it in a way that was directed towards a party agenda to limit and control gun ownership in general. And I think it's sad and candidly disappointing we heard that in our chamber. There's nothing that can bring your family members back, and we regret that, and this is not what this bill's about. I apologize. There are people that, if you heard your family members being talked about in a political debate, I think that's regrettable. I apologize for that. As you think about our nation, though, right now, you think about where gun ownership is, it's not, the increase in gun ownership is not happening by those who fetish guns, as the gentleman from the 14th alluded to. The increase in gun ownership in our nation is disproportionately in minority communities. In many cases, people who've never owned firearms before who feel the need to be able to defend themselves. They live in communities where when seconds count, the police are minutes away. The increase in minority gun ownership is because, I believe, the wanton lack of attentiveness to policing our streets in many of our urban centers by the very party that was standing here speaking against this bill, indifferent to providing real law enforcement, indifferent to really providing safe streets, indifferent to prosecuting crime as it should be prosecuted when felonies are being committed against their own voters and our citizens. I apologize to those people who live in urban centers whose elected officials would prefer to fight political battles than to police and keep them straight, keep their streets safe. I raise this, Mr. President, because the Americans, if there are Americans that that exhibit a great intensity to protecting their gun rights and seem to be uneasy about that, it's because of the onslaught on gun rights we see in our nation in general. Citizens in Switzerland, I think if you talk to them, don't feel like there's this partisan fight over this issue of gun ownership, whereas it seems to always be on the table, always be politicized in this chamber in political debates, that somehow people who want to own an AR-15 to defend their apartment, their home, their family from increasing crime around them are being sort of cast aside as being, that's just extremism. No, there are people in our underserved communities that feel the need to defend their families because increasingly government won't do it. Mr. President, I would like to thank my friend and seatmate, the senator from the 38th, talked about the idea of us signing on to a sales tax holiday for school supplies. I stand with the senator from the 38th and the 36th. I will be the second or third signer with you if you want to bring a bill back that would put the sales tax holiday on school supplies. I support that. But it's a false choice to suggest that doing that and this are at odds with each other, because what we care about here and what this chamber is seeking to do in a balanced and thoughtful way is protect the basic rights of folks to defend themselves. Even when the elected officials that represent the communities seem to be indifferent to that, because the majority party here cares about all people. No matter what your zip code is, no matter what neighborhood you come from, your ability to defend yourself, heaven forbid, there's a shooting, there's violence around you, we care about your basic right to protect yourself and your family. Because sometimes when seconds count, law enforcement is just minutes away. And this majority party stands with you and those who feel the need to protect yourselves where you can. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
Recognize the senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to clarify my intent for the line of questioning and establish that if this bill was really intended for the purpose of helping those who engage in the sport of deer hunting, I think it really distracts from what the real purpose of this bill was about. This bill is really about making cheap guns and ammo accessible to any and everyone who wants to have them, regardless of any reason. And if you're not making a change to specifically exclude handguns, what the senator from the 31st is actually conceding is that this legislative body is doing nothing to prevent gun violence and crime, to keep our families safe in schools, and to keep our families safe in communities. This is what is at the core of what we're talking about. Let's give guns and ammo, make it easy and accessible for everybody. And there's no exclusion here, even if it was intended only for hunting. When the tragedy happened at Appalachia High School, which is about 15 minutes from where I live in Gwinnett County, I heard from both Republican moms and I heard from Democratic moms and everyone in between. And all they were asking, and they've seen all the gun regulatory bills that have been filed and not passed here. All they're asking and really pleading, why aren't y'all doing something to keep our kids safe? Why aren't you doing something? You have over 30 bills to curb gun violence, yet none of those bills have passed this body. We even had a safe storage bill, did not pass. I think it came out of this body, but ultimately didn't pass and get signed. And it's really hard for me to explain to them, hey, you're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the person that would support this, and my Democratic colleagues would support gun sense legislation. But I need you to move 7 of my colleagues to come along with me to help me pass that legislation. So asking us to do something, this bill is not to do something that they're asking for. This just makes guns, ammo more accessible. And I wanted to go back to the point that the senator was making about minority communities and gun violence. Gun violence in minority communities is caused by several factors, including systemic racism, economic inequality, and easy access to guns. So when you talk about that, please understand there are systemic reasons. And if we are not investing in those communities and addressing those systemic reasons, you have gun violence. And offering more access to guns without knowing where those guns are coming from does not help. Mr. President, I yield well.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 7th.
I can hold my baby. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. So I ran for office. Oh, he's awake. I ran for office to support our working families, like the working family I grew up in. And here I am today as a state senator, and I have this bill in front of me trying to give an 11-day tax exemption to guns. The Republican Party's priorities are jacked up, to be honest. Nobody's asking for this. Working families in Georgia are not asking for this. We've had sales tax exemption bills for menstrual products. Girls in Georgia today are not going to school because they don't have the menstrual products. to go to class. They're staying at home. They're missing class. Moms are begging for relief for diapers, for cribs and strollers. Why wasn't today's bill prioritizing on working families? And I dropped a bill last year and again this year on a sales tax exemption bill on school supplies. We had that in Georgia for a while, and it really helped teachers and students. And I have yet to get a hearing on that bill. But this bill today was prioritized over all of those. And I am frankly so disappointed with my Republican colleagues for leading with this, for choosing this as their priority, because it doesn't help working families. It does not. Rent is too dang high. People can't afford health care. Eggs are still expensive. We got real problems in Georgia. Let's solve them. I yield the well.
Senator's yielded. Recognize Senator from 26.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those of you who don't know, I'm a gun advocate. I'm from a little town called Toomersville. It's on the other side of the railroad tracks in Byron, Georgia. And so if you're going down the interstate, when you see the Byron exit, you make a right. And when you get to the red light, you make another right. And when you get to the red light in town, you make another one, and then you cross the railroad track, and that's Toomersville. Now, ever since I was 11 years old, and my family moved to Macon, I always loved going back to Toomersville on the weekend so I could go hunting with my cousin. I could shoot a .22 rifle. Farmer used to pay us 75 cents a squirrel to shoot the squirrels out the pecan tree. After then, we went rabbit hunting. Had a J.C. Higgins double barrel 14. And when the dogs went to hollering, I just stood by the tree, and when the rabbit ran by, I shot him. In 1972, I was teaching school. And every payday, I would go by Rose's shopping center and buy me one of those old military guns. I bought a SKS for $49, had the bayonet, everything with it. Wish I'd about 10 of them. Well, that gun is worth about $700. That's the gun they used in Vietnam. This bill is not about the Second Amendment. This bill is about money. You in this sausage making business. You grind it up, and now you putting the wrapper on it so you can sell it. That's all it's about. M-O-N-E-Y. But then when I talk about what the farmers lost in the hurricane, I get a little pushback. 11-day sales tax, $3 million to Georgia. Well, we can use that $3 million to help these farmers. You see, we can have a gratuity clause in the Constitution. Talks about many things, how you use money and everything else, and what you can and what you can't do. You're a legislator. Well, who can fix that gratuity clause? You and I. We make the law. But yet you want to put this on the Second Amendment. I got about 40, almost 50 guns. Ain't about no Second Amendment. This is about a sales tax holiday, and folks gonna sell plenty guns and ammunition. And the state gonna lose $3 to $4, $5, $6 million that we can help the folks who had a catastrophe. Hurricane come up through Florida. I thought it was coming to Macon, and then it steered to the right and went to the east. Tore up counties. Augusta looked like a bomb had been dropped on it. Farmers were devastated. And now bankers are calling loans due and payable now. And those who don't have a whole lot of money gonna be out of luck trying to start all over. But here today we can talk about a sales tax holiday for some guns. This ain't about the Second Amendment. This is about making money. And what's hard to understand that? Do y'all realize that we got folks who might not be able to make it? Families who've got everything tied up in property, machines, and they owe the bank. How they gonna start all over? What about our sales tax holiday for farmers? Now, I'm not a farmer. I'm from the city. We don't grow pine trees in Macon, Georgia. But I represent Twiggs, Wilkerson, Hancock, Washington, and Johnson counties, all rural communities. So let's don't get this thing twisted. Stop coming up here talking about a Second Amendment right. It's not about the Second Amendment. This is about money. And who benefits? The folks that make guns and ammunition. That's just all this is about. Understand what you're doing. You're grinding it up, you making the sausage, and now you're putting it in the wrapper so it can be delivered. So stop coming up here talking about a Second Amendment right about gun ownership. Gun sales are up, but now you want to give 11-day holiday, and they can buy plenty of guns and don't pay any sales tax on it. Well, when you look at that budget that you're about to pass, that $38 billion budget, and you give up $5 to $6 million over here, you got to replace that money. That's a hole in the budget. So I'm telling you all, I ain't asking, I'm telling you. And when I get out on the campaign trail, I'm going to tell them. Look and see how he voted for it. Y'all keep talking about all these guns. You're going to have a record. And that record is used against you when you're running for office and you got an opponent who knows how to go get the information and use it. So understand me well. You're making the sausage. You're putting the wrapper on it. And now you finna sell it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body. You know, I've been thinking about this legislation and paying attention to those that have gotten up here and spoken pro and con for this legislation. The only reason why I've taken an interest in it is because I spent 4 months of my life this summer on a study committee based on firearm safe storage. And I asked the author of this legislation, does this include safe storage devices? And the answer was yes. But let me just tell you a little bit about the experience I had as chair in this firearm safe storage committee and what I heard from the Georgians that attended this meeting. You see, we spent time trying to identify what was critical in trying to curb the gun violence in the great state of Georgia. And some may ask, well, why is that important? Well, I tell you the reason why it's important. And what inspired me to get involved in this is those pediatricians that was outside our doors every single year saying, what are we going to do to save the kids that had been harmed, that had been killed by firearms? All of us that have been in this chamber for a while have seen those members out there march around with their white coats on. So I approached them and said, why is it that this body hasn't done something to curb gun violence? And you know, they spent 4 months educating me about the importance of safe storage. Let me just tell you some of the things that they educated me about. They said, do you know that firearms is the #1 killer of children in Georgia? Firearms. Then they went on to say, well, it's not just the #1 killer of children in Georgia, but it's the #1 killer across the United States. Children, adolescents. The statistics would show that roughly every single day a child in this state is harmed by a firearm, a whole lot of them unintentionally, simply because the parent or the caregiver did not provide a safe storage for that firearm. That's why I got involved. That's why I asked the Lieutenant Governor and this body for this study committee, which was granted, by the way. But throughout the last 4 months that I spent on this study committee, I learned so much more about gun safety. I learned so much more about gun storage. And I can tell you from the experiences I had in listening to people in the industry, the medical providers, and to simply listen to people in the community, that no one came to me and said, Senator Jones, we need a holiday so we can go out and save taxes on any storage devices or any other weapons to purchase. That was not on anybody's list. Let me tell you what I learned, and I hope that this conversation will shift some way during the course of this body and well before we sine die. Here's what I heard from the experts that I spoke to in Florida, in Texas, in North Carolina, as well as Georgia. They said, Senator, you really need to focus on having a czar, having a person across the state funded either within the state or in private sector, really doesn't matter, who's going to focus the public's attention on firearm safe storage. That was the #1 thing. The #2 thing that came out of this, simply because of this horrific shooting we had at Appalachia, was why can't we do more in regards to mental health? So one of the things that we suggested in the Firearm Safe Storage Committee was simply to have the Department of Education promulgate some rules that would create an opportunity for anyone in our school system to be aware if a child in Broward County or any of the other 159 counties in this state had a problem. We're not saying that the legislature is going to mandate it. We're simply asking the Department of Education to create their own rules, their own database. As a matter of fact, I went so far as to introduce both those bills before I had to take a leave last year. And in introducing both those bills, I had a chance to talk to a lot of legislators in here and was quite surprised that the reception I got was rather tepid.
But I say to you today that if we can give a sales tax holiday, we can create a department, a database where children that are having issues can get the health care, can get the services they need. That's what Texas does. That's what North Carolina does. That's what Utah does, and some of the other states out there. Folks, in Georgia, we are in that list of 100,000. We're 7th in the nation in terms of being the worst in firearm safety in this state. That is not a list anyone in Georgia would want to be on, because I think Georgia is so much better than that. I think those of you that served with me in this legislature these past 20 years is so much better than that as well. Why are we talking about taking a sales tax holiday, making it easier for people to buy weapons when we have this critical issue facing the youth in this state? Why are we doing that? If we're going to have a sales tax holiday, I like to have a sales tax holiday for customers that buy cars. That would certainly help those that need transportation get to work, find a job, and take better care of their family. I would like to have a sales tax holiday for people that buy clothes. That would certainly help those out there that need clothes to go out and buy the clothes they need, not just for themselves, but for their children as well. Why don't we do something to help Georgians instead of helping this small minority out there that none of them in the study committee that I chaired ever said we need another sales tax holiday? Folks, let me just tell you that Texas is ranked 27th, 28th in the nation in terms of gun violence per 100,000. Why do they do that? And why are they in that position when certainly the demographics in their state mirror what Georgia's demographics are? Simply because they have someone in state government that's committed to facilitating and distributing pamphlets and information regarding gun safety throughout preschool, high school, middle school, and colleges as well. They do the research. They work with private industry in terms of having information distributed at gun ranges and even at the shops where you can go and purchase a weapon. Why is that so difficult for Georgia? If we are serious about saving lives, if we are serious about improving kids and the dangers that they face, if we are serious about preventing another Appalachia, and it's not just Appalachia, there have been many, many gun shootings in our high school. This year already, across the country, there's been well over 25 from the last data that I've seen. This is a problem that we need to address. And I would hope my colleagues in here would stand ready with me to do just that. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
I know the time's getting late, and we'll try to break for lunch just as soon as we finish up here. Senator from the 22nd, like to speak to the bill. We have, after the minority leader, we have the senator from the 35th who will be bringing the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We were just listening in the back about some of the dialogue that's been going on, and one of the things that caught my attention was the idea that those who represent people in urban centers would rather fight political battles than keep people safe. Within those urban centers, there are prosecutors and police who work tirelessly to make sure that people are safe. And many of those prosecutors and police in those urban centers, maybe in a former one, and now actually representing sheriff's deputies, are African American. And we are dedicated to keeping people safe. But you see, we understand something that's very important. We understand that there are other issues other than just guns that exist in those particular urban centers, issues of poverty, racism, purposeful state-sponsored discrimination. And we want the government, the same government, that help concentrate that poverty, help promote that discrimination, to help those persons, and we want to make sure they get that help through government action. We want to make sure that people can afford to go to school. We want to make sure that we have a good public education because many people, even with a voucher, cannot send their kids to private school. We want to make sure that we raise the minimum wage because many persons who live in these areas, they actually work these type of jobs. We want to make sure that we have better housing because these neighborhoods many times are dilapidated because of state-sponsored redlining. We want to help folks gain access to the middle class through government action, but those programs were gutted by the majority party. So there is a difference in philosophy. Your solution is to help people buy guns. We want to give them opportunity. We want to give them jobs, raise their incomes, and yes, through government action, because it was the government that caused those people so much pain generation after generation. And with that, I yield the will.
All right, we've got our last speaker on this bill with the minority report, Senator from the 35th. Floor is yours.
Colleagues, I rise in opposition to SB 47, and I want to remind us that we have been elected to look out for the wallets of Georgians all across this state. And instead of doing that with legitimate bills that do that, we are focused on politics. And I know that my colleagues, some of you are thinking why we are spending so much time debating this bill. My question to you is, why is this bill on the floor? It should not be on the floor. This debate and this bill would be way more helpful for Georgians across this state if it was a bill for a tax holiday on items where Georgians need relief, like diapers, menstrual products, school supplies, or even Georgia-grown products. Instead, we are spending time on something that is solely being used for politics, political messaging. And our children, colleagues, our children deserve better. Because in September 2024, Appalachia High School suffered a devastating and avoidable tragedy when a mass shooter used a legally purchased firearm, an AR-15, to kill 2 students and 2 teachers. And why do we keep bringing this up? Because had this bill been law a year and a half ago, that weapon could have potentially been purchased during this tax holiday. Think about that. That weapon could have been potentially purchased during a tax holiday that this body has prioritized. Students who were in the classroom that day, like Isabel, who we saw just a few days ago, are supporting common sense gun safety legislation that protects our children and teachers. Yet this chamber, with the bills that it has prioritized related to guns, are intent on flooding our streets with guns instead of keeping our families safe. This bill is disrespectful to gun violence victims, survivors, and the millions who have lost loved ones due to this epidemic, including hundreds of children who have lost their lives in this state each and every year. Instead of bringing solutions, we have seen this body respond to this tragedy after tragedy with more guns, and more guns. And colleagues, even if this bill were necessary, it would only be, as I've stated, to promote responsible gun ownership. So we agree with the premise that gun safes should receive a tax holiday, even gun locks. But as written, this bill is way too broad, and the refusal to amend or even allow amendments tells us everything that we need to know about the intentions behind this bill. Democrats have introduced dozens, if not hundreds, of gun safety measures since Republicans took control of this chamber in 2003. These measures respect the Second Amendment rights and protect Georgians from gun violence. We should be considering those bills today. Bills like SB 49, that bill should be considered today. But that's not what this is about. This is about politics. Because if it wasn't about politics, we would not have heard the lies and the recycled talking points about urban centers. Let me take a quick moment and give you some facts about those urban centers, including one of the ones that I represent, which is the city of Atlanta. The city of Atlanta, working with community and law enforcement in the city, has reduced crime in every major category for 2 years in a row. Homicide is down 26%, and the city completed its public safety training center because of its commitment to safety. What we know about crime incidents in the city of Atlanta and all across the state is that that gun violence most often occurs because of disputes that quickly escalate and people have access to guns. So if you were actually to speak to a chief of police in an urban center and to law enforcement in urban centers, they would tell you that the problem is the access and the easy access to weapons. And I'll also add, since we like to say that this is a simple sales tax bill, that bills like this and bills like the Guns Everywhere bill, that some of you call constitutional carry, have real impacts. They compromise public safety. And I've seen that in my own life. Within weeks of the Guns Everywhere bill passing, we had people walking through the streets of communities where children play, holding AR-15s just for show, traumatizing children who were playing and just wanted to have fun with their friends. I took my kids to a store to buy some candy. Within weeks of the Guns Everywhere bill passing, and there's a gentleman standing outside of that store with a semi-automatic rifle with an extended clip. Why? Why? For sportsmanship? That's not sportsmanship. We have a duty to protect our constituents, colleagues, and SB 47 does not do that. It makes them less safe, and it undermines the safety of our communities. And as a result, I'm asking you to vote no to SB 47. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from the 31st to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm just going to kind of work backwards quickly to address some of the things that were said. So to my friend from Atlanta, from the 35th, many folks know, and I've talked about this before, growing up in DeKalb County, growing up in neighborhoods back in the 90s, weapons, if you're a criminal, you're a gangbanger, whatever, you can get weapons. If you're going to break the law, you're going to commit a crime, you're going to do everything in your power to get weapons. We can pass all the laws we want, and that's not going to change. That's not going to change what's happening. You know what will change what's happening? Is having strong families, having dads at home, having moms basically talking to their kids about what's right and what's wrong. But what we've seen from the last months and years of this erosion of society, which anarchy, chaos happens when people want to break rules and people want to break laws and they don't want to listen to their parents, their teachers, their coaches at football or basketball. It's basically all the arguments we heard from the minority party. We want to talk about urban centers and what's happened. I guess we forget from the last 4 years, the rule of law didn't mean anything. We saw cities burning down across the country. We saw moms and families having to go buy more weapons, to protect themselves, protect their kids. What about those individuals who live in the suburbs? Individuals carrying weapons and shooting police officers. The other comment was made was, well, what about those that use kayaks and paddle boards and boat and fish, which I do many of those things. There was an opportunity in the Senate Finance Committee to make an amendment. I never heard the amendment, and I said I supported the amendment. So, nice try. The other part about the Second Amendment, and as my colleague from the 30th talked about, the Second Amendment doesn't stop. If we don't like the Second Amendment, then change it. Talk to our federal leaders, talk to the American people, talk to Georgians, and change it. The Second Amendment doesn't stop. It doesn't stop when there's a pandemic, when we saw the Biden administration basically try and stop people from having access to get permits and shut the world down. Well, the Second Amendment didn't stop, and it doesn't stop. Which, yes, to the senator from the 14th, it was one of the impetus, reasons as to why constitutional carry passed, which was a campaign promise I made and I did keep. So as we talk about an 11-day holiday, let's not go off track. Let's not, give reasons. There are victims that were at Appalachia who did have impacts to their family, that lost loved ones, that lost husbands, that lost individuals in that community. And I apologize, just as the senator from Cobb County mentioned, to those families, because there are family members who do feel the way I do and feel the way the senator from Cobb County and many others and from Barrow County do. So let's not take one brush and just think that all these constituencies, when we go back home, don't think that what we're saying here. And I respect the arguments from the senator from the 10th. His community, yes, we come from not totally different communities, because I grew up in DeKalb County, but the people we represent, they do have a little bit different priorities, and I do respect that. But at the end of the day, the cause of a weapon doing harm is not because of a hunter wanting to purchase a weapon and participate in the outdoorsmanship. It's because of criminals and bad guys and bad ladies, and having prosecutors, like in Fulton County, Georgia, that can't even prosecute a case. So let's not forget about the rule of law and what it stands for. And as my friend and my colleague from the senator from the 29th said, those that are enforcing the laws, we need to protect them, we need to save them. But at the end of the day, it's on parents, it's on grandparents, and it's what's going on in the family. And if we continue to pass laws in this country, in the state, that erode the family, then gun violence is going to go up. There's going to be more shootings. There's going to be more harm to law enforcement. And the world's just going to continue to get out of control. So if you want to have that debate, I look forward to the rest of the session as we have that debate. Mr. President, I ask for a favorable consideration. Vote green. Thank you.
The Senator's closed debate. So now we're in the posture of voting on the underlying bill. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 31, the nays are 21. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. All right, if y'all bear with us, we're going to do this Senate Resolution 95, which it shouldn't take too long. Then we're going to adjourn and let Senate Bill 21, which I thought we would get to, just go back to the rules calendar, and they'll be up to the Rules Committee whether or not they pick it for tomorrow or not. So if that sounds all right with y'all, that's what we're going to do. So, all right, Senate Resolution 95. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 95 by Senator Dolezal, the 27th, and others, a resolution naming the forthcoming new legislative office complex the Sonny Perdue Legislative Center and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brest, the 6th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 95, a resolution naming the forthcoming new legislative office complex the Sonny Perdue Legislative Building and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring to you Senate Resolution 95. If you look just across the street, we are building a new legislative office building. I think some of you are picking out your offices already. It will be open before we know it. And we, in this bill, will name that building after George Irvin Sonny Perdue III. And Sonny, as we all know him as, served in this chamber from 1991 to 2002. He then went on to become Georgia's 81st governor from 2003 to 2011. He then became the United States' 31st Secretary of Agriculture, where he served from 2017 to 2021. Little known fact, at least to me, during that time, in 2018, he was the designated survivor during President Trump's State of the Union address, and thankfully his services in that role were not needed. And then most recently and currently, he has served as the Chancellor of the University System of Georgia since 2022. Born in Perry, Georgia, Sonny was a quarterback at Warner Robins, walked on and played football at UGA, and went on to marry Mary in 1972. They have 4 children, 14 grandchildren, and are many-time foster parents. And I know that it would be a great honor for Sonny to have this building named after him in the very place where he started his career, and happy to bring this piece of legislation before you, Mr. President, or this resolution, I should say. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there are none, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Senator from the 20th, what purpose you rise? You want to speak to the bill? The good man from, you better speak to the bill. You're from Houston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be as brief as I can. I know we've got a lot of business to attend to this afternoon, but thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank the senator for bringing this resolution. The Perdue family and the Walker family have been friends for generations, and Governor Perdue, Chancellor Perdue, Secretary Perdue is an outstanding man. He's done a tremendous job in each role he's served in, and he's really served his whole life serving others and serving the state of Georgia and our nation. I don't know if the resolution mentions it, but he's also a veteran too, so he's just had a lifetime of service. His son, Dan Perdue, is now our county commission chairman, so the legacy of service continues through his family. He's got another son that is a pastor of a large church, doing a great job serving in ministry. But just an outstanding family, and this will be a wonderful tribute, and I appreciate the senator for bringing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution by substitute. All those in favor of the resolution vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution by substitute, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4, and this resolution, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted by substitute. I just want to say something real quick. I remember the first time I was a student at the University of Georgia, first time I ever heard the name Sonny Perdue, and it was a cold, rainy day, election day, and one day in November. It was actually a day I went to class, and Charles Bullock was my teacher, and I walked in there with my red and black newspaper. I think Greg Bluestein might have even been writing for the red and black. It's probably the only articles I've ever liked of Greg's back when he wrote for the red and black. I'm kidding, Greg, I'm kidding. But I never will forget, Dr. Bullock goes, like I said, it was a cold, rainy day. He said, well, ladies and gentlemen, today you're going to see history be made, because you're going to have, for the first time since Reconstruction, your first Republican governor. And we all kind of looked around at each other, and we were like, well, who is it, Dr. Bullock? And he told us about it was a South Georgia Southern Democrat turned Republican that was going to win the day, who was a longtime legislator and just a good guy. And he's somebody that I've always admired from afar, and he's done just about everything you can possibly do in this state. From being a senator, I think he's a majority leader in this body. He was the governor of the state, and he was the secretary of agriculture for the United States, and now he's the chancellor of our university system. So Sonny has spent his entire life as a public servant, and I'm just appreciate. And he's a dear friend of mine too, to be honest with you. He and I are very hard-headed, so we get along very well, but we like to rabbit hunt and we like to bird hunt, and he's a heck of a shot. He's a heck of a person, and he got a great family, and this will be a nice legacy that his family will appreciate, and he will appreciate for years to come. So thank y'all very much. Well done, and thank you, Senator, from the 27th. So. Recognize the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 13th.
The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned. Secretary, read the announcements.
Mr. President, the Rules Committee will meet upon adjournment in room 450 in the Capitol. At 2 p.m., the Appropriations Judicial Subcommittee will meet in room 125 in the Capitol. At 2 p.m., the Appropriations Government Operations Subcommittee will meet in room 310 in the CLOB. At 3:30, the Finance Committee will meet in MES 1. At 4:30 p.m., the Health and Human Services Committee will meet in room 450 in the Capitol. And at 5:30, the Government Oversight Committee will meet in room 307 in the CLOB. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Any other announcements? I do have one birthday announcement. Lorianne Paradise, birthday is today. I swear she's been 32 for 3 years running now, every time I ask her. But happy birthday, Lorianne. She does a great job for our office, and I know she does a great job for all the members here. Recognize the Senator from the 24th for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have asked the senator from the 5th to come to the well with me also. Tomorrow, you will be getting a form. We'd love for each and every one of you to join the Sportsman's Caucus. So you'll be getting a form tomorrow. Be ready to sign up. Thank you.
All right. Who's your sidekick there, Senator? Y'all came as a team? Yes, sir. Okay, good. Any other announcements? All right. Majority Leader has moved. The Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Ayes clearly have it. Y'all have a good day.